Star of The Walking Dead has recently signed on to star in an episode of Guillermo Del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities anthology series. Fans have been wondering what the former Rick Grimes episode will be about. In this video, we'll be doing a deep dive into Lincoln's career, as well as exploring the actor's 3 best roles. Who will be starring alongside Lincoln in Cabinet of Curiosities? And who exactly will he be playing in the series? Stay tuned to find out. First up, who did Lincoln play in Afterlife?
Josh is dead.
Afterlife was a British mystery drama that ran from 2005 to 2006. The show reached great critical acclaim and was one of Lincoln's breakout roles on television. The actor's role on the show was so celebrated, it even won him a 2007 Golden Nymph Award for Outstanding Actor. The show centers around Lincoln's character of Robert Bridge. Bridge is a university professor with an interest in the occult despite being skeptical. This skepticism is put to the test when Bridge meets Allison Mundy, who appears to be in full communication with those in the afterlife. The show follows the two as they work together to help people, both living and dead, move on from their grief. Afterlife is a perfect example of Lincoln's prior work dealing with supernatural and occult themes, which he appears to be returning to with his role in Cabinet of Curiosities. Whether this role will be as celebrated as his time playing Robert Bridge remains to be seen. Next up, who did Lincoln play in Love Actually?
It's a self-preservation thing, you see.
Despite being a minor role, Lincoln's turn in 2003's Love Actually is one of the most memorable parts of the entire movie, and one of the most celebrated roles of his entire career. Love Actually is not only one of the most widely loved Christmas movies of all time, but one of the most famous rom-coms as well. This is saying something, considering the 10 different plot lines at play in the movie, featuring some of British cinema's most famous actors of all time. It's quite impressive that Lincoln stole the show, considering he was co-starring alongside people like Alan Rickman, Hugh Grant, Colin Firth, Emma Robertson, and Martin Freeman. The film sees Lincoln playing the role of Mark, who's caught in the unfortunate situation of being in love with his best friend's new bride. Chiwetel Ejiofor plays the role of Peter, Mark's best friend, and Keira Knightley plays Juliet, his new wife. Quite possibly the most iconic scene in the entire film is Lincoln's character silently confessing his love for Knightley with a set of cue cards at her doorstep, while Lincoln is likely best known for his role in a certain horror franchise. This role shows his ability to play in much more sentimental roles as well. Up next, his most famous role. Who did Lincoln play in The Walking Dead? Undoubtedly, Lincoln's most famous role throughout his decades-long career came in the series adapted from Robert Kirkman's comic book, The Walking Dead. The show ran for a whopping 11 seasons, beginning in 2010, and only recently coming to a close with the final episodes of Season 11 being released in October 2022. During its run, the show was a bona fide cultural phenomenon, being one of the most commercially successful and critically acclaimed series of the 2010s. The show follows a ragtag group of survivalists fighting to create a life for themselves amidst a zombie apocalypse. From the beginning of the show centered around Lincoln, playing the gruff and lovable Sheriff Rick Grimes, across his run as Rick Grimes, Lincoln would earn a total of 13 major award nominations, including 5 wins. With Lincoln endearing himself to international audiences through his role in one of the most popular horror series of all time, fans are likely looking forward to seeing him reappear in a scary setting with Cabinet of Curiosities, even just for a single episode. Moving on, what is Cabinet of Curiosities? Cabinet of Curiosities is a recent horror anthology series created and presented by a modern master of horror, Guillermo Del Toro. Del Toro is one of the most recognizable names in modern horror and fantasy. He's been releasing films for 2 decades, creating some of the most celebrated fantasy horror films of the 21st century, including Pan's Labyrinth, Hellboy, Crimson Peak, and Nightmare Alley. Perhaps his most famous film to date was 2017's The Shape of Water, which earned Del Toro 2 Oscars for both Best Director and Best Picture. It features 8 individual episodes, 2 of which were co-written by Del Toro. The 8 episodes of the show were released 2 at a time between the 25th and 28th of October. The show has been released to largely positive critical acclaim, having received a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Lincoln's episode, The Murmuring, would be the 8th and final episode released. It's based on a short story by Del Toro, with the teleplay being written by Jennifer Kent, who also directed the episode. The questions stand. Who will be playing alongside Lincoln in The Murmuring? What character will the actor be playing? And what will the episode be about? So, who will be co-starring in Lincoln's Cabinet of Curiosities episode? With Lincoln Lincoln being classified as horror royalty at this point in his career, it makes sense that his co-star in The Murmuring would have to be an equally respected actor in the genre. This is why the star of the cult classic film The Babadook was enlisted to star alongside him. This is, of course, none other than Essie Davis. The Australian actress reached international acclaim for her role in The Babadook, which became an unexpected smash hit. She's also known for her role in Season 6 of Game of Thrones as Lady Crane. In The Murmuring, Davis will be playing the role of Nancy Bradley, who's married to Lincoln's character. In the episode, Nancy appears to have clairvoyant powers that her husband does not, as she begins seeing ghosts in their new home. In many ways, it appears that Lincoln will be playing a supporting role to Davis in this episode. The question remains, who exactly will his character be in relation to Davis? Up next, what character will Lincoln be playing? In the episode, Lincoln will be playing the role of Edgar Bradley, an ornithologist who alongside his wife travels to a remote country home to continue their studies of bird murmurations. It's revealed that the couple has lost a child, and much of the episode is about their methods of dealing with this insurmountable trauma. This role is not entirely dissimilar to that of Rick Grimes, as both characters have to deal with the tragic loss of the people closest to them, as well as the world changing around them. Like Grimes, Bradley appears to be an excellent husband to his grieving wife, trying to console her and get her to open up after the tragic loss of their daughter, Ava. Much of the episode is spent exploring Edgar and Nancy's relationship, specifically Edgar's attempts at trying to regain a level of intimacy with his wife. There is one particular scene fans have been raving about, which sees Lincoln pulling off some fantastic dance moves in an attempt to woo his despondent wife. The episode appears to reach greater emotional heights than many of the other stories told throughout Cabinet of Curiosities, which is likely in large part due to Davis and Lincoln's experience in the genre, which led to their exceptional performances in their roles. With this being said, we've still not fully revealed the story of The Murmuring and Lincoln's thoughts on the episode. Finally, what will the episode be about, and what did Lincoln have to say about it? Although we know the episode is about Nancy and Edgar Bradley coping with the grief of losing their daughter, what are the supernatural elements at play that make it so terrifying? Aside from the very real horror that comes with the loss of a child, Nancy begins to experience terrifying visions of ghosts in the new home the couple has moved to. It appears that these visions symbolize Nancy's inability to move on from the death of her daughter. The fact that Edgar cannot see any ghosts shows that he is likely doing a better job of moving on from the trauma than his wife is. The ghost story in the episode mirrors the Bradley's own trauma, with the ghost of a little boy who passed and his anguished mother being the two spirits who haunt Nancy. The episode does a wonderful job of using a supernatural storyline to depict the very painful process of healing from grief, which seems impossible to move on from. Lincoln himself seems very proud of the themes captured in this episode, likening them to some of the most famous horror films of all time. He says, "Don't Look Now, The Shining, they're sort of essentially about loss and all trauma or relationships in crisis. They'll never recover from the death of a child, no one does, but they can certainly try and live on and continue to love each other. Those are the overarching themes in this thing. There's a really exciting area for actors to explore." Have you checked out Lincoln's episode of Cabinet of Curiosities? What did you think of this episode, alongside the rest of the series? Are you a fan of Del Toro's other work? How about Andrew Lincoln? Do you think his role in The Murmuring stacks up against his other famous roles? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe as well. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.